It's just been, it's my favorite night of the week. I mean, it's what I look forward to, you know. So we're going to start here in just a second. We have 2 minutes. Man, we're running kind of behind, but it's totally fine. So we got four rules of engagement for tonight, okay? What's rule number one?
Hush. Be quiet.
Be quiet. Except for what?
Questions.
There you go. What's number two?
Questions.
Be in the chat.
Be in the chat. Why be in the chat?
So you can.
Because
If someone asks questions.
Because people are coming online before they're coming in here. That's great. What's number three?
Take notes.
Take notes. Okay, that's fine. What's number four?
Great leaders ask questions. Just pick up your chairs.
Great leaders what?
Ask great questions.
There you go. All right, so everybody who's joining us online, what's up? Normally we have a smoother transition than that. But before every night before we go live, we always go over the top 4 things that we want to do. So we want everybody taking notes. And why do we take notes?
So we can review them.
You don't expect us to internalize everything that happens tonight.
Right. We don't expect you to take all the teaching and stuff from tonight and just learn it all and internalize everything tonight. Okay, so we want you to take some great notes so that when it comes time for when you need it, you've got something to reference back to. Because tonight is not going to be a night where I'm just going to be like teaching at you guys or lecturing you. I mean, we do that enough. We don't want to do that here in this space. What we do want to do here in this space is provide a great conversation about spiritual disciplines that can help you be with Jesus, become like Jesus, and do what Jesus did every single day of your life, because that's what we as a church are trying to accomplish for every age group, okay? So tonight, I didn't put it in the text, because y'all been looking at the text every week when I ask this, but who knows what we're talking about tonight?
It never said.
Right. Exactly, it never said it.
Spiritual discipline of living in community.
Dang! Okay. Oh man, that's good. Okay, so tonight there's a couple things that we're going to talk about as far as community is concerned. But here's the thing, is that anytime anyone is talking tonight, so we want to respect the conversation, okay? So us being quiet is good, but us asking great questions and honoring the person who's asking the question and talking, that's even better. Okay, so we're not just being quiet, okay? We're providing a safe space for people to ask great questions, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly run through, and if you've been here any other weeks, you know this teaching is like a lot, and it's super fast, okay? So get your texting thumbs ready because you're about to fly on these notes. So I'm going to give you 7 practices of community. It's called the 7 rhythms of community. Okay, so some people, these are called why are these called spiritual disciplines?
Because they're hard.
Because they're hard. It takes discipline to do it, right? Somebody's been paying attention. Everybody give it up for Caesar. Good job, Caesar. Oh, man. Good job, good job. Everybody who's online, by the way, thank you for being here. Obviously, we're joined by an in-person audience. You saw me talking to them when we went live. But we're going to be asking questions and having a conversation here in person. We'd love for you to come in person if you can. And if not, though, we still want you to ask your questions. So they're actually in the chat helping me watch, keep an eye on the live stream feed. So if you have a question, put it in there, and then we will answer your question, and we'll be able to have a conversation and connect you guys. So that's great. But yes, it's called a spiritual discipline because it is not meant to be easy. It takes discipline to do it, and it's often actually extremely difficult. I mean, it's just hard. So it's a lot easier to live in isolation than it is to live in community. But it's also probably one of the things that has the most obvious benefit when we look at what it's like to live with a bunch of life-giving friends, right? I mean, that just kind of makes sense. Okay, so what we're going to do is, like I said, I'm gonna go through the 7 rhythms of community. The reason I'm doing that is because a lot of people say, "Oh, it's great to have community," but they don't know what community means, right? It's like, "Oh yeah, like gotta have my fam, bro." You know what I'm saying? Like gotta have my people. But it's like, okay, what determines good community from bad community? You don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like we don't know that. So we're gonna talk about the 7 rhythms of community, and then we can spend the rest of the time just talking about what that means and then answering questions. Sound good? All right, let's go for it. So there's 7, and we're gonna go through these in like 5 minutes. So we gotta go. Okay, so number 1 is celebration. Number 1 is celebration. There is always something to celebrate. How many of you know a family where they celebrate too much? They just celebrate all the time. The Hollimans is one of those families, bro. The Hollimans just celebrating all the time, and I love it. It's so good. What a great value to have in your family and in your community of friends if you're just celebrating each other all the time. 252, that's why 252 is so fun. Because 252, we're just hyping people up about just dumb stuff all summer long. You know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't even deserve it, but like we're just hyping them up. Like, yo, Caesar got a mullet, yo, you know? So anyway, stuff like that. So there's always something to celebrate. And so having a community that constantly has a culture of celebration is a great sign of a life-giving community. The second thing is bearing burdens. Okay, that's a very Christian phrase, but it's such a good phrase, bearing burdens. Okay, when things happen to people, they often just try to struggle through it and get out on the other side. But what a community does is they recognize that this thing that you're going through is an opportunity for God to show you how much He loves you, and He's with you right now in this moment, right? So if you can have a community that does that, green flag, super good. All right, number 3. This is a little extra. All right, so for any of my non-churched friends out there that are tonight or watching online, just bear with me. Confession of sin. I don't know why we word it like this, but it's like, that's such a stuffy way to say it. You know what I'm saying? Really what I wish we would say is realizing you're not the only person who struggles with that thing. Because what confession of sin does, and the reason, I mean, I know why we word it that way, but the reason we word it that way is so that, like, you could go through, again, isolation versus community. You could go through your life and struggle with this thing, and it's just tearing you up. And it's like, man, I know I shouldn't be living this way, but I am living this way, or thinking this way, or doing this thing, but I'm addicted to it, and I can't stop, and blah, blah, blah. That's isolation. You could struggle with it your whole life and just try to pretend to be okay, and like, okay, you know, you might end up all right. But then you have a community, you come in and you say, like, hey, this is actually what I've been struggling with. Like, I keep doing this thing. I don't know why I do this thing. I know it's not good, but I keep doing it. And then you can have a whole group of other people that are like, bro, me too. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's just like, it does something to you when you know that you're not in the battle alone. And the enemy wants you to think that you're the only person in a battle. But not only are you not the only person in a battle, but a lot of people have the same battle going on. You know what I mean? So confession of sin, I don't like it worded that way, but it's true. I mean, like confessing sin to each other, and not even really sin, but just things that you're struggling with, things that you're having a hard time understanding or whatever, and just processing like emotions. I mean, that's super healthy. Very, very good green flag. Okay, what is this? 4? 5? 4. 5. 4. Ain't nobody know. We're just gonna go to the next one, okay? The next one is hospitality. Okay, hospitality. Man, hospitality is a good one. You want to have a place in your life that you can call home. And I think hospitality really does that. I mean, you think about your mom and you think about your dad. And a lot of you are about to be in a spot, if you haven't been here already, some of you are college students, but a lot of you are going to be in a spot soon enough where you leave home to go to college and you realize that one of the big things that is missing from your dorm is that your mama ain't picking up your clothes. And there's this hospitality sense where people are working behind the scenes to provide a safe environment for you to live and to grow. And so you take that in an emotional sense, and that's what a life-giving community does. A life-giving community prepares the community to be a safe space where people can come and share what they're struggling with. And if you come, it's like hospitality is not this. If somebody comes and says, hey man, like I just, like, do you have like any time for like coffee this week? I just want to hang out, like get coffee. And they're like, Brian, got time for you. Okay, red flag. Okay, that should be red flag number 1. But if somebody's like, bro, like come over to my house, spend the night, like we can hang out, we can play games, whatever. For me, it's like like if students are like, man, I want to talk about something that I'm dealing with, I'll be like, come have dinner at my house with my wife, me and my wife. Like we'll sit down, we'll talk with you, we'll do whatever. That's a sense of hospitality that is extremely healthy because it's inviting you into a safe space where you can have really productive and healthy conversations and activities and stuff. That's, I think, a lot of the reason behind why Jesus, whenever he met with people, they always ate together. Like they're constantly going and like eating dinner together and stuff like that. Okay, so number 5.
Yep.
Okay, number 5. Hey, eating together. What do you know? Eating together. It's actually communion, but for anyone who doesn't know what communion is, eating together, Jesus actually, the whole thing behind communion is that when you're in a space of a safe environment with healthy, life-giving relationships, you can sit down with them, and literally Jesus says, a lot of people think like, it's like go to church and have communion. But really what God's saying, like every time you get together, remind each other of what I've done for you. And so then there comes the symbolism of breaking the bread and drinking the grape juice or the wine or whatever, depending on what kind of church you go to, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, so you have this intentional interjection of your dinner, your eating, your whatever. There's an intentional interjection to say, hey, I know we got a lot of stuff going on, but let's just take a second and let's just realize the fact that we wouldn't even be where we are if it wasn't for Jesus. I mean, I don't know if I had a community that did that for me when I was in high school. Like if I had somebody tell me in the midst of my crisis in high school, if somebody came and said like, hey bro, I know you think your life is falling apart right now, but Jesus is still king. We wouldn't even be alive today if it weren't for him. Check my perspective and help me focus back on Jesus. Like that's a good community. Okay, so eating together / communion, however frequently you want to do that. 6th thing, super simple, but prayer and worship. Do you pray together with your community? Do you worship together with your community? Everybody in this room essentially does, because you're in this room right now. Let me just say, if you didn't know ahead of time, this is a good community, okay? This is a good community to be a part of, okay? But you should also have community at your school. You should have a community in your home for your family. And your family and your school community, that's very difficult for a lot of us, but what's true here should be true there. Like, a lot of us, man, it's so difficult to take the life that we live in church and to take it to school. Like there's a wall, an emotional wall right there that we don't know how to bridge. We're like, man, I know I love Jesus, but like when I go to school, it's intimidating and nobody wants to talk about it. And I don't want to be that Jesus dude. You know what I'm saying? And what I have to say to that is kind of off topic, but the only thing I have to say to that is one of the best quotes I've ever heard is this guy he was talking about where Jesus says, like, you should go and preach the gospel to all nations. A lot of people, what they think that means is I need to go, like, put my favorite verses, my bio, and like, you know, like, okay, don't do that. I cringe when I see that stuff. Okay, it's like, so actually what that means is you need to live your life in such a way that you don't even have to say anything, but people know there's something different. Okay? Like, that's what it means, okay? Oh my gosh. I used to cringe so hard. I don't want to, like, come after anybody's throat right now, but I'm coming after it. There was this guy that I went to college with, and he's just like, all about himself, and just like, I couldn't stand it. But he was like the Jesus dude, right? And every time he went to go, like, be alone with Jesus, he would like take a picture of his Bible with the coffee cups there, and he'd be like, man, this is like, I love my quiet time with God. And I'm like, bro, how quiet is it if you're scrolling on Instagram and you're hearing all these other voices? And I'm like, and at the end of the day, there's some people that do it, and it's really, really good, but it should not, a public platform should not replace your secret place. There's a reason that it's called secret. Okay? So let's just make sure that we keep those in a healthy boundary. Okay, so anyway, off that soapbox, on to the next thing. Generosity, this is the last thing. So get your questions ready, because we're about to dive into some Q&A, some conversation. Okay, so the last thing is generosity. Generosity. Man, there's so many good examples of what generosity looks like in different communities. Some people think of generosity and they think like, oh, financially. Like, yeah, I want me some millionaire friends that are going to help me out. You know what I'm saying? That's a good community. Not saying that won't ever happen, but that's not what this is referring to, okay? So I think that what you could, I'm trying to think of like good examples for like your stage of life, for like high school. I think generosity looks like somebody giving their time when you feel like you have no time in high school to help you in your walk with Christ, to help you figure stuff out. Because we go through junk in high school. I feel like high school is just a lot of junk. And the more junk you figure out, the better off you'll be. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's a lot of really good things that God wants to do, but if you don't have a life-giving community to help you through it, it's going to be extremely difficult to keep your head above water. Okay, how many of you feel like you're in high school right now and you feel like you're drowning? Right. A lot of people are like, I mean, yeah, it's okay to say that you're drowning because that's how, like, you know, we come in and say, you know. But I think that what generosity looks like for y'all's stage of life is somebody just coming up to you and saying like, hey, I've got like 1,000 things that I need to do, but are you okay? Like, how are you doing? Because I know I got exams and I got this and I got this and I got homework and blah, blah, blah. But you know what? I'm not going to watch 5 hours of YouTube tonight so that I can have a meaningful conversation with you and help you realize that you're going to be all right. Like, that's what generosity might look like. That's just one example. There's so many examples, but that's just one. Okay, so let's start. Does anybody have any questions just to start off with? Any questions? Okay, I have some questions for you guys. Okay. Which of these rhythms do you think is the most difficult for you to experience in the community that you're in right now?
Like this specific community, or just like in general?
I think just community in general. I mean, if you have it separated, then that's fine. You know, you can like choose one, but just in community. Like, what do you think is the most difficult?
I
Yes.
think confession of sin is probably the most difficult for me because it's kind of a hard thing to be like, hey, like I'm struggling, like I'm doing something wrong, like something bad is going on in my life, and I just feel like that's a hard thing because you want everyone around you to kind of see that like, oh, I have everything good going on in my life, but like the
Right.
truth is like all of us sin and like we all have something that's going on.
Yeah. Gosh, that's so good. How many of you relate to that?
Hex yeah.
Yeah, y'all just didn't want to say it. Everybody lifted their hands. That's the most difficult one. Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. Why do you think it's so hard to share? Like, why do you think it's so hard to do that?
I feel like I want to be perceived as like everything like is going perfect in my life all the time, even though it's not the truth. Like I want to be able to help other people, and so I feel like sometimes I need to seem like I'm perfect so that other people will be like, oh, okay, I'll listen to her.
Okay, that's so good. All right, we're going in, people. Okay, so this is really good. So let's talk about this. So like we've said every week, there's a spiritual warfare that's happening over your life. The battlefield is where?
In your mind.
In your mind. Your thought life is where the enemy comes in. That's why the Bible says, take captive every thought and submit it to the authority of Jesus. So what does that mean? Well, let's talk about it. So you just gave that great example that everybody in here relates with and I relate with. Now, what you can do in literally like spiritual warfare, it's such a that is such a Christian phrase that is so just weird to some people. But literally what it means is the enemy's after your life, but so is Jesus. And you got to pick which truth which you're either listening to lies or you're listening to truth. So that's why it says submit every thought. So if you have a thought that comes into your head that leaves you with anything other than the fruits of the Spirit, hope, joy, peace, patience, kindness, if it leaves you with guilt and doubt and condemnation, immediately that's a red flag. That's from the devil. So I'm going to submit that thought to Christ. And what does the Bible say about it? So you're just honest and open about that. So it's like, okay, if I know that I want people to perceive me this way, then I'm going to go into the Bible and I'm going to see like, well, what does God say about me? Because at the end of the day, it matters less what other people think about me. I'm concerned about what God thinks about me. And if I can connect myself with that, I'll begin to live out of that truth. And then you'll begin to win in that area of your life, and it'll be like super successful. So I think that one of the things that you could easily do, if y'all are all struggling with that, which you all said you are, so you all better do this, is you can just go through the Bible, and you could Google it, Google it, and you can just look up a list of like, what does God say about me verses in the Bible. And Ephesians 2:10 will pop up there, and you'll realize like God created you on purpose for a purpose. When he made you, there was no mistake. Like, you're perfect just the way you are. And when you start believing that, it's like, sick. I don't care what you think. Papa upstairs thinks it. It's like when you start living out of the truth that is what God says about you and what God has for you, then that really helps, right? So that'd be a good thing to do. All right, who else? We all said that. What's another thing? Yeah, Grace.
Bearing burdens.
Okay.
Like, not wanting, you never want to be the one to, like, bring the mood down, or, like, you want to always be, like, happy or positive, and then, like, it can be hard to bring something when there is something going on.
Okay, so it's hard to like share what you're going through because you don't want to like bring other people down. Gotcha. Who else vibes with that? Did I just say vibes with that?
Yeah.
Am I 3? What did I just say? Okay, Nathan, you said you connect with that. What is that like for you?
I don't know, I feel like it's just really easy when you're hanging out with people to just kind of like, I guess, get a feeling of the friendship is just about having fun, and I guess really being vulnerable and taking that step to actually open up to people, I guess is like really scary a lot of the times, open up about those issues, and a lot of times like, you're only ever friends with someone playing video game stuff, open up stuff about that, you want to be like, I just here to play video games with you, dude, I don't care, if you're in a good community, they do care,
Right.
but it's still just like, I guess, scary,
Right. Okay, so like you said, there's definitely a difference between just like some dude that's like you never met him before and he's on Xbox Live and that's it, So what is the difference though? Or not? What's the difference? That is the difference. But let's say you are in a life-giving community. What makes it so scary about like opening up? Either of you can answer this.
I mean, I feel like it's really just a lot of like vulnerability, which is something that I know gets easier the more you do it, but it's just, I guess, kind of like a leap of faith, a lot of times, which it's like if you jump off a high dive, you're going to be terrified the first time you do it. Then after that it gets easier, but I guess just doing it the first time is never really easy,
Yeah. Man, I think that's so good, y'all. Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. I would even say that people obviously see the benefit of living in community and having like life-giving friends, right? But it's so much easier to live in isolation. And I think that is the number one reason, is because people are scared to be authentic. What would you think if you knew the real me? Right? Now, the beauty of the gospel is that Jesus died for you when you were at your worst. So it doesn't matter. Like, he knows you and he's still So at the end of the day, the two biggest needs that anyone has in life, this is a blanket statement, and it's a very big blanket statement, but we're about to talk about it. The two biggest needs that you have in your life is to be fully known and fully loved. For someone to know every single thing about you, your ups, your downs, your goods, your bads, your dreams, your passions, your heartbreaks, all that stuff. And to still, knowing that, choose to love you. And that's why we have this whole section of verses about God is love, because that is what was true for you. Is that in Romans, like, Jesus knew you at your worst, and while you were still a sinner, lost in your sin, no hope, that's when he died for you, not when you were at your best, right? So if that's true, then why is it so hard for us to like be authentic with people? You know what I mean? It's like, what? Because you're right. I mean, that's like, it's scary to do it, but why? Like, what is the thing that prevents you from saying, hey, here's what I'm struggling with? Okay, go for it.
I think it can also be like if your trust has been betrayed in the past, like learning to, even if you know it's a good, healthy community, learning to be vulnerable after you've been hurt.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm about to connect some verses here. Hopefully this just like blows some people's mind, because it's blowing my mind right now. So what you both just said is you said the sentence, but it started with, I'm afraid that blank. I'm afraid that people will judge me. I'm afraid that people will not be my friend anymore, or it's scary. Like, and y'all just that's kind of what you just talked about, is that I'm afraid that this X, Y, Z will happen. But what Jesus says, and like in the Bible, is that perfect love casts out all fear. So if we just connect both of those ideas, then hopefully it's not going to happen overnight. But if we can connect both those ideas, where we can say, God fully knows me, he fully loves me. God is love. Perfect love casts out all fear. If I'm fully known and I'm fully loved, then I can be authentic and I can have real community. And people can know who I really am, and I can thrive with those people. It's possible. It's not just possible, it's a calling and a discipline that you're supposed to live out. But you're right, it's extremely difficult. Gosh, that's so good. Thank you guys for sharing that. All right, what else? Anybody else? Yes.
I would say probably eating together in communion. Like when you go out to eat lunch with someone, and like you're not like you can pray before you eat, but then the rest of the conversation is like drama or gossiping, and like not meaning to, it just happens, and like you're not actually like honoring the food that God's given you.
Right. Come on, preach. Dang. That is so true. Because what you're saying, you're taking it a step further than just saying like, let's pray before we eat. I hate it. I can't stand that job. You're going to pray before you eat and then spend the whole time eating talking about trash. You know, it's like, it doesn't make sense, right? Because that's a very religious thing to do. But the relationship says, hey, this is why God wanted me to do this, is because he wants me to recognize him in every moment. And to have intentional interjections into this meal, to this time together, to say, hey, let's just take a second and recognize what Jesus did. And you're right. I mean, if that doesn't impact the rest of your conversation, what is that? I mean, that's just, you're just going through the motions. You're not doing anything. So, man, that's really good. Gosh, that's good. How many of y'all have difficulty, like, in the middle of whatever you're doing with, like, your friends, like, just popping Jesus in there? Right. Like, oh, man. I actually am convicted right now because I hate it when people do that. Like, we'll be at the gym or something, and Chris Carson, I'll take him to the gym. I'll take Chris to the gym, and he'll be like, man, so, like, what's God been teaching you lately, bro? And I'm like, bro, I'm trying to get this rep out. I'm not thinking about that right now. But honestly, it's, like, so good. Because what he doesn't know is I was getting lost in my thoughts and something that I shouldn't, whatever. Maybe it's something I shouldn't be thinking about, or maybe it's something that I shouldn't be thinking about myself, insecurities or whatever. And those thoughts just aren't God. But when you take that moment and you interject God into the conversation, you take a second, you focus on God, it immediately reroutes your perspective, reroutes your thought, everything. I mean, we joke about it all the time, but now I'm convicted, so that's great. All right, anybody else? We have 5 minutes left. And we can actually open it up now to any any questions you have about anything. It doesn't have to be the question that I asked, which was which one of those is the hardest. Anybody? All right, Grace, go for it.
How do you begin to learn to trust and be vulnerable after having bad past experiences?
So basically, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I think you're asking is, how do you trust a good community when you come from a bad community? Mm-hmm. That's a great question. Anybody got any suggestions? Or any experiences that you've had? All right, Montreal?
I think you should start slowly and take those boundaries alongside of you when you are starting going to a new community. But don't be afraid to jump into that community. Mm-hmm. But also have those boundaries set to know that, hey, this is where I've been. I'm not that comfortable yet, but I'm stepping into it.
Yeah.
So take your time with it and have those boundaries set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great advice. Being strong with your boundaries, but also being aware that fear is not healthy. Because fear is from the enemy. Like fear, if you're afraid of what might happen, that's the devil. So reject that thought, replace it with Jeremiah 29:11. Because what it starts to think is man, if I connect with this group, this is going to happen again. But God's plan for you is that what is ahead of you is better than what's behind you. You know what I mean? He's always there for you. So if you can replace it kind of with what he's talking about, replace that fear with just really healthy boundaries, and build trust back, then I think that's a really good next step. Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. Any other questions? All right, Nathan.
I feel like for myself personally, a big part of like community is like how much you're locked in. I feel like if you can leave leave a community or something and just have not changed, not a big thing. So I guess, how would you recommend, I guess, locking the communities more and help other people like feel like they belong, and like if they're starting to fade away, I guess, how would you reach them?
Okay. That's a big question. So it's good. That's a really good question, though. But so the end of it, you said, how would you help people feel like they belong too and not like fade out? Is that kind of what you're
I
saying?
know like last year for me, especially with COVID, I like stopped going to a lot of events, and then I kind of started to feel distance, and it like kind of snowballed to the point where I just wouldn't show up to like any of the youth stuff. And I guess, how would you like deal with that if other people had that happen to them? Because I don't want that to happen to anyone else, and I would like to be the person in their lives to not make them feel like that.
Yeah, I think specifically talking about people that are in your community, not so much you yourself, but talking about how you interact with people in your community that are kind of like in and out. They're not so much like connected. I think one of the biggest things, and this is something that I've had to learn a lot over the past 3 years. Y'all, this is so good. Oh my gosh. If I hope y'all get this, okay? Y'all gonna get it?
Yeah.
Okay. The tendency, y'all, oh my goodness. This is so good. I think it's straight from God right here. Because this is what happens in church all the time. Oh my goodness. All the time this happens in church. People are connected. You have a core group of people that are serving, that are giving, that are carrying the weight of ministry, and they're family. They're doing all these things. They're bearing each other's burdens. They're growing. They're doing all this stuff. And if we're not careful, we can become cynical to the people that are on the fringe and say, hey, you should be here every Sunday. Yeah, you should be giving. You know what I mean? You should be serving, dadgummit. Like that's what it's like. And it's like, whoa, bro, like chill out. Because what I also know is that we will be known for our love for one another. And your conversation with that person like that is not helping anything. So instead, we have this phrase that we say often on our staff in 252, whatever, is that you replicate what you celebrate. So instead of me going after the people that aren't doing what they should be doing and blah, 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 like I'm not your daddy. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to come after you with a belt and say like, hey, you should be doing this and you should be serving and blah, blah. What I am going to do is take every opportunity that I can and celebrate the people that are doing all that they can do to dive into the relationships that are available for them, right? So, I mean, that's why, like Caesar, I've talked about him over the past 3 years because he's done 252 3 years in a row, and every single year he's been at everything we've tried to do. He's been involved in all of it. He's been behind the scenes. He's been moving chairs. He's stayed here after everybody's left. He's been here before everybody gets here. I mean, Now me and Caesar have this amazing relationship. We're super close. I'm gonna bawl my eyes out when he graduates next year. But it's just because he took the initiative to dive in, to do what's available, take the opportunity for relationships, and to do all the stuff, right? And so instead of saying like, hey, y'all should be like Caesar and blah blah, I'm just gonna lift up Caesar in front of everybody and be like, man, I just want to shout out Caesar right now for doing A, B, C, D, all the stuff. And because I know that what I celebrate, people are going to look at and be like, oh, that's what you're supposed to do. Because honestly, at the end of the day, having grace for people is a huge deal. Because honestly, like they may just not know. They may just be super new to life-giving community. And so maybe like Nathan, I mean, you're one of those guys like Caesar. You know what it's like to be in life-giving community. You've experienced having it and not having it. And so it's easy to hold people to a standard that is not healthy for them. So it's like, okay, you just got introduced to this great community, but you don't understand that you need to show up and be consistent because you've never had anybody be consistent in your life. So like maybe everybody on this dude has bailed after the first time meeting him, but we're going to hold him to an expectation to show up every week. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, but what I am going to do is I'm going to celebrate the heck out of every time he comes. I'm going to celebrate him so much. Be like, bro, you showed up today. You showed up today smelling bad, looking bad, but you showed up. You know what I'm saying? Like, whatever it looks like for that guy or for that girl, like, we're going to celebrate them. Because for them, it may be a huge deal. Like, I showed up. I'm terrified, but I showed up. You know, it's like, great. You know? So I think that you just want to celebrate the people that are going after the relationship, that are digging their roots deep so that they can be planted and grow, you know. If you can celebrate that, then I think that will be replicated in the future. So, and honestly, it's the healthiest way to do it. Because if you just beat people over the head and then they come do it, then they're doing it out of obligation, not out of love for what the growth is producing in their lives. And I don't want people like that on my team. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I want you to be here because you love to be here. Like, I'm not, like every single person who comes here on Wednesday nights, I want you to come here because you love to be a part of this community and you love to have these conversations. And if you don't, that's great. Don't come. Go to something else. You know, like we have Sunday, we have Oasis conference, we've got all this stuff. But Wednesday nights for us, it's the dining room table. It's the family conversation, you know. So we're going to celebrate the authentic conversations that happen here because that's what we want to keep happening, you know. But that's a great question. It's 8:04. 4 minutes over time. Okay, so what do we have to do? We have Oasis conference in 2 weeks, 2 weekends from this weekend. So after this weekend, you got 2 weeks. There's still slots. So I think there's like 70-something, 60-something, 70, whatever, students signed up right now. The first 100 get out of free stuff. It's not about free stuff, but everybody loves free stuff. You know what I'm saying? So you can go on the Definition website. You can sign up for the conference. You can register from there. The other thing that I want everybody to do, we do this every week. I haven't mentioned it the past few weeks, but I need to start mentioning it again because it is very important. How we connect with each of you and how we are staying connected with what's going on in your life, praying for you, being there for you, is through our texting service. Now, people think texting service, and they're like, I ain't going to pray with some robot. I get the text, okay? It's just it's a really safe way for me to interact and to have a conversation with you guys, to pray with you about whatever's going on in your life. So you can text definitionyth, no spaces. Please know how to spell definition correctly because a lot of people text in and it's like definition, you know, it's like bro, you need to spell it right, you know what I'm saying? So definitionyth, no spaces, and you text it to the number 97,000. Somebody please put that in the YouTube chat because I don't have it open right now. Were there any questions that we had in the YouTube chat? Anybody asking any questions? No? Yes, you had a question?
Yeah, what exactly is Oasis?
Great question. Nathan is going to let you know what Oasis is. But for anybody who's watching online that has that same question and the brief summary of Oasis, is we kind of got tired of having youth conferences where we just like tell you what to do. And we decided like, how about we just create an experience where we can just show them what it's like. So it's literally a weekend where you can experience life-giving relationships. So a lot of you in this room may be wondering, like, I don't know if I've ever known what that is. I don't know if I've ever been in a life-giving relationship. I don't even know what that means. If you don't, you should come to Oasis because you'll be in a small group. We will have sessions. It'll be a big, like, exciting thing. But the important part of the whole weekend is the relationships that you build in the small group discussion. And we just give you a weekend to experience it and then just keep doing it. Like after the weekend, just keep doing it, you know? In a sense, in an overview, that's what that is. But yeah.
Sounds great.
It is. It's fantastic. Any other questions? Questions online? Anybody? Nope? Good? All right. Tell them bye. See you next week.